Muito obrigado.
Thank you very much, Honourable Commissioner. We will now hear from the political groups, and we start with Mr. François-Xavier Bellamy from the EPP group for 2 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, President. Commissioner, first of all, I want to share my joy with you as we create this EDF. It's the end of a lot of work. I really want to thank Mr. Krasnodebski for the important work he's done on this subject. I think the EDF turns something into a reality. It shows that we share a joint ambition in terms of defence, so that we can support the armies of our countries. Rapporteur, you said it yourself, it's not about creating an EU army, but it's about giving our forces the means they need by investing together in our strategic autonomy. Europe has friends in the world, but we are not vassals. So if we involve our military forces, we have to look at the means, and we have to look at other forces in the world, even if they are close to our values. There are, however, 3 risks to the fund. The first is that there is not enough ambition. In the budgetary negotiations on the fund, we did not have a fund as big as we could have hoped. And when the Council met to discuss the fund, it was around a big table, and they decided to cut the fund by a further $1 billion. But what we have here is the beginning. Then we have to worry about the scattering, the scattergun approach of the fund. We need to invest the fund in strategic structural projects. Then there's a third risk. We need to have a real strategy. Our countries need to come together and have a real vision of their role in the world. And I think that's so important today. Europe at the moment is incapable of speaking with one voice and doesn't speak out on its principles and views. So that's the challenge we're grappling with today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next speaker is Madam Patricia Toya.
Signor Presidente.
President, Commissioner, colleagues, today we're taking an important decision which I believe is forward-looking, creating a common fund which supports collaborative and cooperative projects between different companies in different countries in a sector such as defence, which is characterised by national specificities that are anchored in the differences between different states. This is a major step forward towards political integration, and integration which I hope will contribute to a common defence policy. This is how I think we need to look at this provision. We've encountered 2 major challenges. First of all, in moving from an experimental stage to a fund. The first one was, as the Commissioner said, to find a balance between different countries, different sizes of industrial operators in the field, between large and small operators. We needed an agreement that can produce results. The second is an ethical challenge. I'm sorry that this morning we talked about ideology. Ethics is not ideology. Ethics is ethics, and I think it's very important in this sector. The fund, as we've heard about competitiveness for all industrial policies, it's supposed to be competitive to help with new startups and also help the SMEs that we don't want to be left by the wayside because of the large operators. It's important also for strategic autonomy, as we've heard. And we've worked very hard to make sure that the presence and participation should be from consortia, including at least 3 countries and 3 different companies. It should be extended, and it should not be restricted to just a few champions or countries that are very strong in the field. So I think this truly does extend the contribution and contribute to our strategic autonomy. But also it helps with our continental industrial and competitiveness policy that has advantages for all countries. And then it's very important to say what the fund will do and what it won't. It's very clear, and I think we need to say it loud and clear, that it will not be able to finance arms production nor any actions to develop autonomous lethal weapons without any meaningful human control. I think these are very important aspects. My group considers them essential. I wasn't involved right from the start of negotiations. I replaced our colleague Martin, but I believe these are essential issues. We've worked on them, and in the negotiation we have taken steps forward on these points. But maybe we could have done more, Mr. Commissioner. I'm saying it to my colleagues and to you. We could have done more, and I don't think that would have encroached on the innovative nature of this project. I think maybe we would have been able to get a broader consensus in the Parliament. In fact, amendments have been tabled, and we will be able to have that flow into the implementation stage, not now. It was a very difficult negotiation. We have to support this agreement now. It wouldn't be useful to open it up again, but these issues are outstanding. So, Commissioner, I urge you and I ask my group to keep a close eye on this, to make sure that it's successful, to make sure that the results we want to achieve are achieved in the common European interest, but also that these very important aspects, and we can see it in this time of major conflicts, that these should be scrupulously observed in the phase of implementation. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Mr. Dominique
Riquet.
Monsieur le Président,
President, Commissioner, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I'd like to thank the rapporteur for the work he's done. This has been long-term work, and with the adoption of the FP, we're opening a new page, something that we've been thinking about since the 1950s. This is really a new step towards creating a geopolitical power. Of course, it's not as ambitious as we would have liked. We're now at less than 8 billion euros. We have to make do with that. But this is the symbol of a new Europe, a Europe that cooperates. It is also a badge of maturity. We've traversed a number of crises, and we've had to do things that we'd hoped we'd never had to do again. So we can now see this badge of independence for sovereignty. This is an excellent time to take this step, and we can now start building on a Europe for defense.
Thank you.
Der nächste Sprecher.
The next speaker is Mr. Jérôme Rivière.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, President. Colleagues, there are many European mechanisms which we don't understand and which are not efficient. They lead to a confederal Europe and are against national issues. And EDF is going to Europeanize military equipment. The Commissioner welcomes this, but after seeing what's happened with vaccines, I'm concerned. If we look at the EDF, all under control of the Commission and the EEAS, there will be less autonomy for the Member States. This European mess is growing every year, and all of this, together with NATO, prevents the Member States from developing their own sovereignty. And all of this weakens our research effort. Where is the support for our industry? All of this prevents streamlining. All of this is bureaucracy as soon as the European Commission gets involved, because at least 3 participants from 3 member states have to be involved in a project. So that prevents national development. And so that means instead countries will buy from abroad. What's been put forward is obsolete, and it won't really lead to good programs. I am speaking out against this federalist proposal. In France, our defence industry is one of our jewels and part of our strength. If we have European defence, it will only be through partnerships between member states responding to operational needs as part of projects that they fully and freely agree on. These projects have already proven to be effective. Brussels centralism won't help. France has to do what it can. If you don't do it yourself, no one will do it for you.
Thank you. And now, directly from Munich, our next speaker, Mr. Bloss.
Ja, vielen Dank, Herr Präsident.
Thank you very much, President, Commissioner Breton, colleagues. The global military expenditure is just as high as it was in the Cold War. Last year, they rose to $2 billion. And at the same time, COVID has meant that GDP has fallen by 4%. These figures are not in relation to one another. And now with the EDF, more 8 billion euros is going into the military sector. So I have to contradict the rapporteur. It's a further 8 billion euros. So instead of working together more efficiently and merging our military systems, therefore saving money, no, we're putting in much more money. In Europe, we're developing 180 different arms systems in parallel. In the USA, just 30. In Europe, there are 17 fighter jets in different types. In the US, 17. If we merge our projects in Europe, we could save up to 100 billion euros a year and would maintain our defence capability. We've got to use this possibility because there's not enough money in education, in climate and infrastructure. And everyone knows that these investments are best placed to prevent wars. We have an opportunity to have a real EU benefit. We could pool our defence capabilities. And as a Schwabian, I have to say that if for less money I could get exactly the same thing, then I'm tempted to do that. The European Defence Fund does the opposite and therefore is cementing European defence and security policy with no strategy. We have also in the Parliament given up our right to control the money. There's no ethical oversight from an independent body, and there's no transparency. This is not good for the future. Europe can and must do much better. Thank you.
Danke, Herr Kollege.
Thank you very much. Now for 1 minute, Madam Beata Mazurek.
Panie Przewodniczący, Panie Komisarzu.
President, Commissioner, in light of the military activities conducted by the Russian Federation in our neighborhood, we must strengthen our defense policy, which would be a source of value added for our industry. I welcome the European Defence Fund, which will invest in joint research and development in the area of defense. I'm happy we have struck a compromise. This will boost our competitivity and strengthen our industry. Money from the fund is good news to all those enterprises and companies which cooperate with the defense sector, especially our SMEs. We must not forget that the defense industry in Europe is not only huge companies from France, Germany and the Netherlands, but other smaller companies, for instance, in Central and Eastern Europe. So money has to be shared fairly and justly, so all can participate in the European defence policy. Thank you.
Danke.
Thank you. Next speaker is Mr. Botenga.
Dank u wel, meneer de
Thank you very much, Chairman. Just, Commissioner, just before the pandemic, there was a party in the defense sector. They were celebrating 5 years of growth in defense. Did you know that France and Germany together spend more than Russia? We're not spending too little on defense in Europe. We're spending too much. We've seen what's happened in Libya and Afghanistan, and we've seen that when we go and fight our battles in other countries, we just create chaos. And at the same time, we have underfunded hospitals, not enough people working in the care sector. These are choices to make savings in the public sector and spending billions on big military companies rather than investing in health care. These choices cost lives, not just in Europe, but beyond Europe as well. And now what are we doing? In the middle of a health crisis, in the middle of a pandemic, we're creating defense funds with an allocation of billions. We don't need a new arms race. What we need is peace. Use that money for public services, for reindustrialization. Please invest in health, not in war. Thank you.
And now the Vice President Castaldo, 1 minute. Thank you, President, Commissioner, colleagues. A lot has been said about the military compact and the new EDF, as well as that it's been said just how essential it is for strategic autonomy. However, the EDF will only contribute to the interoperability of our armed forces and making the EU a credible player, preventing other players not playing by our rules taking the upper hand. But it's also a game changer for the European industrial basis and its citizens, thanks to the clauses on inclusiveness. And the Parliament helped to put that in. It's going to help across the board with large industry, startups, SMEs and economic entities. This is going to create new jobs. It's going to help with research and development and use taxpayers' money more efficiently. We're creating European technical sovereignty. We've set criteria and rules that will bring about a real value added at European level whilst respecting the principles of the EU. The member states have shown a political will to do this. It's very important. Thank you very much. From Bucharest, directly connected, Mr. Bushoi.
Dear President Karas, dear Commissioner, dear colleagues, I would like to congratulate my colleague, Mr. Krasnodebski, for concluding the negotiations, and a special word of appreciation for Commissioner Thierry Breton, for Director General Pesson and the whole team from European Commission for the very good initiative. Defence and security have become one of the Union's priorities in recent years after a decade of systematic decline. Defence spending and investments remained the sole responsibility of the Member States and suffered major reductions. Over the same period, defence spending in the United States, for example, our main strategic partner and friend, has marked or increased significantly, while many global competitors, especially Russia and China, have upgraded their defence sectors to an unprecedented scale. The European defence industry is among the most technologically advanced in the world, but we are still lagging behind in the global share of equipment exports, and our defence industry is largely represented by small manufacturers and suppliers of equipment. The European Defence Fund is the Commission's key initiative to support from the EU budget research, collaboration and development of defence capabilities. It will make a key contribution to Europe's sovereignty, protecting and defending its citizens, promoting defence cooperation between companies, research actors and between member states to encourage innovation and develop state-of-the-art defence technologies. It will also promote innovative solutions through a budget line dedicated to disruptive defence technologies, and it is expecting that defence funding will be in synergy with the space funding and Horizon Europe. Before the end of 2021, we are expecting the Commission will enhance also the framework conditions for synergies between space, defence and security industries. Success of the EDF and synergies will only arise and be sustained if there is a political support. And dear Commissioner, from the ITRE committee, you will have full support. Thank you so much.
Dankeschön.
Thank you very much. And now, Mr. Heneyalura.
Arvoisa puhemies.
President, our citizens are expecting that the EU also provides security and takes care of our security. Stable, secure Europe is being built together, also in the field of defence. Pooling our capabilities in defence would benefit our security and credibility, and also small and bigger member countries. Thank you to France, because logically, cohesively, it has been promoting defence policy. I also want to thank Commissioner Thierry Breton that he tackles this issue with great success. About strategic autonomy, it's an important part of our thinking and our objectives, and it has a huge impact on the defence industry. Autonomy, of course, doesn't exclude cooperation with NATO. We have to take care of our own defence, and then we are also a credible partner to other operators. European Defence Fund is very important. It makes it possible to pool our capabilities and know-how and expertise. New weapon systems need to be developed, and more it is difficult for single member states, and this has a huge impact on our innovation and competitiveness in the industry. Therefore, also we need the pooling of capabilities in the field of defence. We need in the defence industry the single market, common single market, and the defence fund can promote this. It is particularly important to help SMEs' participation in the common defence markets. Of course, this will strengthen our economy, and the single market would create new jobs, and also would enhance and strengthen our defence strategic autonomy. Cyber security is particularly important in this context. In this field, we need new projects and closer cooperation between the member states. In our negotiations, S&D group wanted to be written down that these projects are carried out according to international human rights laws and rules on arms export, and this will happen, and I'm happy. This will take forward our objective to promote security on our continent and in the whole world. Thank you.
Next speaker is Madame Nathalie Loiseau.
Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, President. Thank you, Commissioner. Today, we sign the EDF, and it's high time. The world isn't safer. There are authoritarian regimes that are involved in military adventures to shore up their power, and our continent is surrounded by crisis areas. Europe is constantly threatened by cyber attacks, terrorism, foreign interference, threats to maritime movement, violation of our airspace. Even our satellites are under attack. Against that background of threats, we are too dependent on others, and we are too fragmented. What the EDF brings to the table is a possibility to fund our defence industries, who will work together, who will innovate together, and who will contribute to our strategic autonomy. Defence industries in Europe create and stand for hundreds of thousands of jobs. These groups are or want to be European industrial champions, and there are more than 15,000 SMEs who make up that industry. So the EDF defence is about action now, not just words. Europe is a peace project, though, and we must therefore give ourselves the way to defend ourselves and to make sure we're respected.
Thank you. And I now give the floor to Mr. Maximilian Krah for 1 minute.
Herr Präsident, Herr Kommissar.
Commissioner, President, Commissioner, peace must be well armed. That's what I heard in my childhood in a communist country, but for once it's true. We know that peace is under threat at the moment, and therefore nobody in this plenary can be against defending our peace with strong arms. But the defense policy is a matter for nation states for good reasons. In no member state is a majority for making this a European concern, and therefore we should make sure that we don't use this EDF to create another competence, and the competence which will be managed in an efficient way. We saw with vaccines that this doesn't work. It only leads to corruption. We can spend this 8 billion better. It's not going to increase our security, and it's not going to give any positive effect at all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Monsieur Sartori.
Mr. Sartori.
Nos pays pourraient économiser des milliards de budget.
Our countries could be saving thousands of their budget if they were to integrate their defence spending. It's not with this European Defence Fund that we're going to do it. Let's regulate this industry to have proper integration. Let's not subsidise it. This fund is a false promise. Worse than that, it is worryingly opaque. There will be a severe lack of parliamentary control and transparency in its functioning, and absolutely no guarantees have been given to us that the arms that result from it will be subject to European export rules. If this fund were to exclude massive weapons of mass destruction, no, it hasn't done that. Europe claims that it's a peace project. However, this fund might end up financing French nuclear bombs. That's completely unacceptable. France has to choose disarmament rather than having its ethical, economic burden shouldered by the whole of Europe.
Thank you very much. Mr. Özlem.
Thank you, President. Colleagues, if the EU moves towards a military union, if the EU spends billions on smarter, swifter war equipment, then you have to say no. Under Article 140 of the treaty, no money can be spent on military purposes. However, the Commission has played a trick. A fund has been established to make defence industry more competitive, but that's a farce and you know it. Colleagues, the EDF will subsidise new military and armament projects, such as the Future Combat Air System and Eurodrones. In addition, there's a lack of transparency and control. Today, they in the defence industry are popping open the champagne, and there will be more weapons. The EU cannot have an EDF. It's irresponsible, it's not social, it's not ethical, it's not environmentally friendly. It's illegal too. We in German will submit a complaint against it. In Germany, excuse me.
Außerdem zugeschaltet ist.
Thank you. Mr. Nikolaou Alavanos joins us from Greece.
Το Ευρωπαϊκό Ταμείο Άμυνας είναι εργαλείο σχεδιασμένο για την προώθηση των...
The European Defence Fund is a way of promoting imperialistic funds at a time of peace. It goes hand in hand with the growth of independent military powers on the backs of the people. It's a matter of making sure that European countries can play a leading role at geopolitical level. They've got 1,000 million so that they can head up the arms race with the Chinese, the Americans and the Russians, everybody acting in their own interests. The promotion of arms systems is integrated in this offensive program. It fits in with the offensive program in NATO. A large percentage of the budget is being set aside for defense when people are mourning thousands of deaths because of weak hospital systems and health system. Once again, it shows the EU is the enemy of the people, is antisocial. Thank you. Thank you very much. We go straight on to the next speaker because I don't see Mr. Niebler.
Thank you, Chair. Dear Commissioner, today we sign the European Defence Fund. It's of historic importance, not just because it's the first time that we actually pulled this off politically, but for the first time since the end of the Cold War, we are facing two near-peer military adversaries, Russia and China. And their self-confidence on the world stage is directly derived and based on their military capabilities and apparatus. And they did their homework quite well. They introduced hypersonic missiles, space weapons, laser weapons, hypersonic glide vehicles, and the lot. And we need a European answer from that, also from the European Defence Fund. But that is an answer to today's threats. The future threats I expect the EDF also to address are more based on self-driving tanks, on autonomous fighter jets, on unmanned submarines. And I expect the EDF also to go that way. Otherwise, it's not the historic moment that we want it to be, because this has to be for a future posture as well. I thank you.
Vielen Dank.
Thank you very much. 1 minute 30 for Ms. Neumann.
Dear colleagues, the defence budgets of EU member states are actually higher than their allocations to the EU budget. So if member states want to develop arms together, they really should pool their national budgets. But apparently capitals decided to waste 8 billion euros from our EU budget for subsidies to the arms industry, and my colleagues from ECR, EPP and Renew are apparently just too happy to support that. So the least we can do now is to make sure that the weapons that will be developed with this money do not end up with dictators. And that actually is also your job, Mr. Breton. Because according to the not much heard of Article 22.4 of the European Defence Fund regulation, the Commission has a right to object to the export of EDF research results to a third country, as no such export should contravene the security interests of the Union and its member states. Or, in less technical terms, the Commission has a say in arms exports resulting from EDF-funded projects, and that's why it's time that we set up an EU-level arms export control system the very same day we spend the first euro from EDF-funded money, because we have seen far too often in the past how national mechanisms of export control fail in cases of multinational armament projects. Thank you very much.
Danke vielmals.
Thank you very much. I'll now give the floor to Ms. Malin-Björk.
For
all of us who work for disarmament and peace, the setting up of the European Defence Fund is, of course, a sad day. It was promised in the treaty that the EU would never, ever be developed into military cooperation. And here we are. How shameful that we've agreed to this. We want an EU which is not characterized by an arms race and war. This is failing peace. It's failing all of us who know that we need to invest in sustainability and climate mitigation, not in battles and war. We're calling into question any cooperation in the future. We're failing the young people who are in the streets demonstrating for the climate. They're expecting something completely different from us, not tanks. Thank you.
Danke.
Thank you very much. Mr. Terras.
Danke, Herr Präsident. Head kolleegid, teadupärast arutasime eile.
Thank you, President. Colleagues, yesterday we had a very long discussion here on the common foreign security and defence policy. We said that Russia is becoming ever more aggressive, that there are wars being conducted by Russia on European territory. We also said that China is becoming stronger and that China can feel its growing power economically and militarily. Today, we are discussing the European Defence Fund from 2021 to 2027. I consider that the EU should take defence policy much more seriously than previously, because the situation in the world obliges us to do that. In Europe, we have to talk about defence. It shouldn't just be a matter of talking about the European army. No, we've got to turn our attention to this very seriously and discuss how we invest in our defence systems and how we pool our forces and our strengths. I urge all colleagues to vote in favour of this report. I am disappointed, however, that the budgetary negotiations have led to a 40% cut in the amounts. I think if we really want to be taken seriously, we have to invest more in defence, and we have to promote cooperation between the member states and with peaceful third countries. It's only thus that we can.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to Ms. Henrike Hahn.
Die europäische Verteidigung.
The EDF provides €8 billion of direct subsidies to the defence industry. But the question is that right at this current time? There is overlap, fragmentation, overcapacity in the defence industry. And now, the worst thing to do would be to give a blank cheque worth €8 billion without concrete criteria and without better processes for greater efficiency. Military capacity needs to be pooled. It's good that automatic systems such as killer robots are excluded from the fund, but it's not good that for the next 7 years the European Parliament won't be involved in the EDF, particularly as this is such a sensitive area. We need better EU cooperation, a better EU security union, but with parliamentary scrutiny. And what we need right now is accountability based on human rights. Thank you.
Herzlichen Dank.
Thank you very much. For 1 minute, I give the floor to Ms. Claire Daly.
Thanks, President. We often talk in here about how far we come, but you know what? This fund for me is an indication of how low we've sunk. A union that was supposed to be designed for peace, signing off for the first time on a slush fund of €8 billion for weapons of slaughter directly from an EU budget. A fund designed by the arms industry for the arms industry. For God's sake, we even have a peace facility where African countries can buy back some of those weapons, and then when they use them and refugees come to our shores, the same companies benefit from the contracts to keep them out. You couldn't make it up. Isn't it time we change tack? The citizens and communities devastated by COVID have a hell of a lot better things to be doing with spending €8 billion on. The Irish playwright George Bernard Shaw made the point: wars don't decide who is right, but who's left. Western interventionism has left millions widowed, orphaned, stateless, homeless. It's time to call a halt. Support the left's resolution to reject this madness.
Ich erteile Herrn Christopher.
I give the floor to Mr. Christopher for 2 minutes.
Αγαπητέ κύριε Πρόεδρε, κύριε Επίτροπε, όλοι εμείς που...
President, Commissioner, all those of us who want a strong European Union feel that this is not possible if we don't have a strong European defense and a European army, a European Union which cannot defend itself, cannot defend its external borders, and which cannot guarantee the sovereignty of its member states, cannot be considered a force, on our planet. I'm angry and I'm upset when I see what's happening. Turkey is violating the sovereignty of the member states of Cyprus, of Greece. It's violating the rights of the European Union, and the EU is doing nothing. The EU must do something. The EU must do what's necessary. There's a deficit in terms of credibility vis-à-vis European citizens, and the European Union needs to say clearly that it will defend each of its countries, each of its member states, and each of the external borders. We must act. We must show that we're strong. We must give a strong answer from the European Union to all of those who violate our borders. It's essential for the EU member states to stop selling arms to Turkey when Turkey uses these arms against the EU, against Armenia, Nagorno-Karabakh, against Cyprus even. Turkey insists on having two Cypriot states. It's time for the EU to act, and to act fast, to protect the external borders. Only thus can we be credible on the world stage and show our responsibility.
Željana.
Thank you very much. Ms. Sovko.
We live in a polarized world. The threats to peace and security on the European borders and citizens are increasing daily. The threats to our foundations and values divide us, even internally. What we need is not a fear, but a visible leadership and a strategy to reassure our citizens that their security is not at stake. Here we discuss on a daily basis the volatile behaviour of some of our strategic partners. The European Union must rely on itself in order to exert with confidentiality its role on the world stage. We must modernise our defence capacities in close coordination with our NATO partners. The European Defence Fund contributes to this endeavour. It aims to mainstream our defence budget spending and actively engage our European defence industry. This fund will promote defence cooperation among European companies, research actors and between the member states to foster innovation and develop state-of-the-art defence technologies. Thanks to the new fund, our European defence will be stronger and more effective. Thank you.
Danke, Frau Kollegin.